This conference will now be
Okay.
recorded.
Yes, we are able to see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, let me. All right. So let's take a look at what is event-driven messaging methodology. As I said yesterday, we did take a look at what is HL7 messaging, or why the name, how the name has been arrived, and what is the message structure. We did take a look at the fact that message is something that has segments, and segments are divided into fields, fields are divided into components, and so on. So we also did talk about how do we navigate through a message. Today we'll see a tool which we'll be using to break down the HL7 message so that we don't need to navigate through it or read it through numbers. But as I said yesterday, I would recommend in the initial phase, if you're new to HL7, just read it manually so that you can understand or you remember what fields have what kind of data, at least the common repetitive data. So let's go ahead and start. Uh, so yesterday I also told about what is a trigger event and how hospital workflow can be broken down into various events. So we'll explore more on that to understand what are the various trigger events that we have in common, which will be most frequently used in today's industry. There are many events. So we saw that there are more than 80 event types as per the HL7 standards, but those events are to cover each and every scenario in the hospital industry of various things. We'll be covering the things that we have seen as part of the hospital workflow to complete the entire cycle of a patient within the hospital. So these are the most common ones that are used, so that we will explore them and understand them. Once you understand it is not a difficult task for you to explore or understand the new event types as and when you go ahead and encounter them. So HL7 messaging is an event-driven messaging methodology, meaning an event that happens in the real-time world um, is actually extracting the data, or is actually generating the necessity for the data to flow from one system to another, system A to system B. So examples are like patient got registered, that data which was captured during that registration process should flow from one system to another. Similarly, when an order is placed in the doctor system or the clinical EHR, then the doctor order related information should flow from EHR to the lab system. In this way, we have various events that are happening, and these events should propagate and travel to downline systems. So HL7's core agenda is that a trigger event will allow the data or will generate the necessity for the data to flow from one system to another. So that being said, we need to figure out what all the HL7 events that could be possible in a general scenario, not very specifically to what's happening within the hospital, but in a general perspective. We saw that we have we divided hospital workflow into certain groups. So registration is one factor, appointment scheduling is another group, and labs, orders and results are another group, and charges are one section of the group. And then we saw that pharmacies and insurances. So these groups pretty much complete the entire cycle of patients being traveling or patients visiting the hospital, right, starting from the visit to the hospital, and then till the end, uh, till the patient leaves the hospital. What all things happen will be covered in these four or five events, or four or five groups that we are seeing, broadly categorizing them. Pharmacies and insurances, as I said yesterday, they deal with a different messaging standard, so we are not going to look at it. We'll see the other four aspects of this one. So each of these have their individual representation in terms of HL7. So now Registration itself, we call it as registration because that is the general term that we use. But in terms of HL7, we represent it in a different manner. So let's take a look at how they are indicated in terms of HL7. So registration is called as an ADT message. So ADT means nothing but admit, discharge, and transfer. So they have generated this synchrony, and we call this as message code. So this message code represents what kind of event or what kind of scenario is taking place in the hospital. Similarly, for appointments, we have SIU, which is nothing but scheduling information unsolicited. So that indicates what is the schedule, and any event that is related to appointments will be indicated with the help of an SIU message. Then we have labs, which are indicated with the help of ORM and ORU. And then we have charges, which are indicated with the help of DFT. ORM is nothing but observation request message, and ORU is nothing but observation result unsolicited. Then we have DFT, which is detailed financial transaction. So these are the various message codes that we'll be using in order to complete the entire life cycle of a patient in a general perspective. So patient gets registered with the help of an ADT and then gets an appointment scheduled with the help of SIU. And then we have ORM, ORU, and so on. Next, we will take a deeper look at to figure out what happens in a registration. So registration itself can mean a lot of things, right? Admit, discharge, and transfer are the three things which are combined here. But when you look at real time, you'll have a lot many things like when a patient is getting registered, the receptionist would ask them whether it is the first time that they are visiting or whether they have been there earlier or before. So based on the situation, they will go ahead and perform their own task. For example, if it is a new visit, then they will register the patient as a new patient altogether. If the patient has been there already, they will check whether they have any changes to their existing information that is there in the system. If there are any changes, then they will update that information. So based on the event, there could be many events that could be possible within ADT or within SIU, ORM, and so on. So we'll explore few events out of them. There are actually many under each message code, but we'll explore a few of them which are frequently seen again. So under registration, you will see that a patient can be a new registration, and which means he will be registered newly within the system, or it could be update of existing information, which means his in patient information is getting updated, like change in phone number or email address or insurance or guarantor or something of that sort. Next, we have appointments. So as part of appointments, we have three different events. One is new appointment, update of existing appointment, and then deletion of an appointment. So patient's appointment, new appointment is considered as one event. And if there is any update on that existing event, like patient got checked in or patient had additional comments to be added, so all of those things will be part of an update of an existing appointment which was there. Then we have deletion of an appointment. When I meant delete, it doesn't mean delete exactly. I meant to represent that as a cancellation of an appointment. The reason why I put the word delete is so that we can discuss whether the data gets deleted in the real-time world or not. So always remember, most of the systems don't delete any information once that is, I mean, usually, unless uh, unless it is necessary. Usually, most of the systems don't delete the data that is punched in already into the system, so that they can have a trial of what is happening, what has changed, what was there before, what has been updated now. So usually they don't delete that information from the system. Softwares are also designed in that way. For example, a patient is scheduling an appointment for today and he is getting it cancelled and scheduling it for tomorrow again. So we'll have a trial of what is happening with that particular patient record. Then
Srinivas,
we
quick
have,
question. So this appointment schedule, right? It's triggered by the registration message, right? Because once you register, then only appointment gets triggers, right?
Yes, I mean, this is Dixon. Srinivas is the organizer. I'll
Oh, I'm
be
sorry.
the explainer.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's fine. That's fine. No problem. So, yes, appointments are, so patient gets registered first and then an appointment is scheduled. Both the things doesn't happen simultaneously.
Okay.
Okay, it's
Okay.
a sequence of events that are happening.
Yeah.
So
So
even
we
when you look,
use like, so
Mhm.
like in US, right? We use those my chart and stuff. So this appointment schedule is basically the my chart, those system, right?
Mhm.
How the appointment is. Okay.
Right, yeah. My chart in the sense from an external system, you are scheduling an
Yeah.
appointment.
Yes. From the patient's perspective. Yep.
Right,
Where we can
right.
go and
Okay,
look at our
correct.
lab results and schedule an appointments.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. That's right. So appointment is considered as a different, when you schedule an appointment, it means that you're already registered in the system, which means the
Okay.
registration part is already done. So you proceed with the next step, which is to go ahead and schedule an appointment. So using my
Okay.
chart, and there are many other apps, with FHIR in play, we have loads and loads of apps using which we can schedule appointments.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Srinivas sir, can you give me access to view the attendees? Srinivas sir, are you there? All right. Yeah. Thanks. All right. So um, next we'll take a look at charges. So charges are nothing but charge related information. So you are going to send out charges from EHR system or the lab system using so there is only one event as part of charges. So this information will be communicated across to the system that is required, whether it is a receptionist PM system or a different billing software system altogether. They will receive the charge information from EHR or labs. And then finally we have labs. Labs are whole two different events, orders and results. So orders will be placed from the HR system which travel to the lab system, and lab will respond back with the results. Next we have, well, let's take a look at these terms in the representation of these terms in HL7. So we saw that registration is represented with ADT. Similarly, new patient registration has one event using which we will represent in terms of HL7, and we have another event representing update of patient information. So an ADT A04 message represents a new patient registration, and an ADT 28 represents update of existing patient information. ADT A08 will represent update of existing patient information. Alternatively, you can use A28 and A31s to represent these two events. So the first one that you're seeing for new patient, second one that you're seeing for update of existing patient information. We have other events as well, A01, A05, A40, to represent the merge of a patient. So there are many other events possible. It is not limited to what we are seeing here on the screen. These are just most commonly used event types, which we are seeing right now. Then we have appointment related events. So appointment has S12, S14, and S15. So S12 is nothing but a new appointment which will be scheduled in the PM system, and S14 represent update of existing appointment, and S15 represent modification of existing appointment. And then you have DFT. So DFT will represent the financial transaction that is happening between EHR to PM, lab to PM, and so on. And then you have ORM message, which is going to represent an order message. ORM has an event type of O01, and ORU finally has an event type of R01. So these are the various events that will happen in the real-time world. And we see that these message types are communicated to the destination systems whenever there is any transaction or any event or happening from any one of these. One quick thing here, we call this as message code and we call this as event type. Okay, combine together ADT A04, ADT A08 or SIUS 12, DFTPO3. Combined together we call it as message type. So we use message type to represent or to indicate what kind of message that we are dealing with. So by looking at ADT, we can understand that we are dealing something with something that is representing a registration. And when we look at an event type, we specifically understand that this event is for registering a new patient. Or A08, this event is for specifically communicating to the destination system that it is an update of existing information. So event type will help us to narrow down even more, whereas message code will tell you on a broader level on what kind of message that we are dealing with.
Dixon?
Yeah, Srinivas.
Yeah. Quick question. What is the difference between S14 and S15? You said modification and update.
S14 is update of existing appointment. S15 is cancellation of existing appointment. Did I say modification?
Cancel
I'm sorry.
of cancellation. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. All right. So yeah, so those are the various events that we have. Those are the various message codes that we have. So together they are called as message type. So we'll be using this term message type a lot down the line. So please keep that in mind. So I'll show you where in HL7 we will go ahead and take a look at this message type. So yesterday I told you that when we were navigating through an HL7 message, we saw that we navigate it using the field number and then subsequently the component number. So we understood what a field is. A field is dedicated for certain data element. And if that data element can be broken down further, then we'll have components. For example, name. Name is dedicated, the dedicated placeholder for name is PID5. And in PID5, as part of name, we may have last name, first name. So these are different components. So each of these component will have the number again. So let's look at a tool that we can use. It's not that just that one tool. We have a lot of tools in the market which you can make use of. Let me pull that out. All right, so as we can see here, this is called a smart HL7 viewer, message viewer. So this is not just one of the tools, as I said. We have many in the market like HL7 Inspector, HL7 Spy, you have HL7 Soup. So these are various tools which will help us to go ahead and interpret a certain message and understand it in a broken down manner instead of sending instead of reading through the HL7 one by one. Let me load one HL7 message and then I'll tell you where you can download this from. So let's take a look at demographic creation of a message. So as you can see here, um, we see that HL7 message is loaded, and when you look at each segment on the left hand side, you have each segment, right? So you can go ahead and click on each segment, and this software will break it down for you based on field wise. So if certain field is missing data, then it will be skipped. As you can see, PID4 is not represented here because PID4 is basically blank, and 2 is also not represented because 2 is also blank. So that is not a problem. Apparently it will read through the entire HL7 message and it will show up each segment or each field one by one. If you want to look at component level, you can just click on this one. As I can see, if I click on patient name, it will also tell you what is that patient name, and it will also break down the components for you to figure out what are the components that are present as part of name field. Okay, for example, if you look at marital status, we can see that marital status has 3 components, and 3 of them data with respect to 3 components are represented here in the component section. Similarly, you have subcomponents and repetitions as well. We'll talk about this later down the line when we come to the point of repetitions. But this is a very helpful tool when you are running with your developments or when you're running with your implementations. This will help you to navigate through the message really fast. And it will also give you more information on what that field is and what is the data type of that field, which is really helpful. So we have 2 sessions on data types. So we'll talk more about data types at that point of time. But for now, we just need to remember field and component level. So if you look at this message, the first segment is always a message in all the HL7 messages, which would represent the start of any HL7 message. Unless it is a batch or a batch file, you might be seeing BHS or BTS, which is a different thing altogether. But regularly for all the HL7 messages, you will be seeing you'll be seeing messages with MSH as the first segment, which represent message segment header. So this is kind of index in our textbook, right? So we have index in our textbook, which will represent what is the content of the entire textbook or anything, any novel or any book that you're going through. Similarly, MSH is kind of an index which will give you some sort of administrative information about that HL7 message. The thing that I want to specifically focus here is MSH 9. So if you look at MSH 9, we have these 2 things like ADT 828. So this is where we usually communicate the message type, which is a combination of message code and message event type. Okay, so by looking at this, what is there in MSH 9, I can understand what type of message I am dealing with. Okay, for example, if it is SIUS 12, then I would say that this entire message is representing an appointment for a new appointment for a patient. Or if it has DFTPO3, then I would say it is this particular message is representing a charge that happened either on EHR side or PM or lab side or anywhere else. Apparently, looking at the message type, you'll be able to tell what kind of message that you're dealing with. So MSH 9 will be used for that. We will focus on the other fields as well in a while, but this is a tool that you can use to break down an entire HL7 message into subsequent parts. So where you can download it from, you can go to this website called Smart View HL7. So smarthl7.com. So in here you can go ahead and download the tools. So you have message viewer, you have message sender, you have message filter, message receiver. So these are the 4 tools. You can download them from here. Okay, you can go to actually tool section, and within tool section you have this option download download option here. You can click here to go ahead and download those tools. So we'll be using message sender and message receiver as well in future to simulate a real-time TCP/IP connection, which we'll see down the line in our sessions. Next, we'll go ahead and take a deeper look at what is the message structure, what is part of a message segment, what is part of PID segment, and all. So let me just pull out one PDF file for us. So let's take a look at message segments. Let me brief you on how we are going to go through the training, or what is the approach that we are going to follow in order to go through various message types and their data content. So if you look at message type of ADT-A04 and its segments, so we are going to take a look at what is the message type that we are dealing with, what are the segments part of that message type, important segments. So this is not an HL7 defined structure. Please keep that in mind. As per HL7 defined structure, we have loads of other segments as well, which are part of an ADT message or ADT A04 or A08 message. The whole idea for us to go through these segments is to practically understand what are the common segments that are being used in real-time implementations, and also to understand what are the important fields of these individual segments that we need to be aware of while going through an implementation. So as part of the standards, we have different standard altogether, and people develop profiles from those HL7 standards, which might have all the segments of HL7 or not. So all of those are different things which we'll be taking a look at in the future sessions when we talk a little bit about conformance and all. But as of now, keep that in mind that these are from a practical approach, that these segments will be seen in a real-time ADT A04 message. Not all the segments which are defined by HL7 will be seen in a real-time message. So we have sample messages as well, which I attached at the end of each message. You can go through them. I'll be sharing these documents with you through the drive. So when we look at an ADT A04 message, we have these segments: a message, which is nothing but message segment header, EVN, event segment, PID, patient identification segment, PV1, patient visit segment, guarantor, and insurance segment. So if you look at the acronyms, these acronyms itself give you a lot of information about what that segment is all about. And it is always a three-letter word, acronym, three-digit acronym, or I would say whatever you want to call it as. It is always three-letter or three-digit word, which you can later expand. So let's look at MSH segment. So before going through the segment details, let's understand what this table is going to tell us. So this is a standard representation of each segment. So first, sequence column represents what is the sequence of the fields that we are going to take a look at. So this table is going to break it down only to the field level. So in case if we have anything more as part of the field, like PID 5 has patient name, name can be further divided into last name, first name, and middle initial, and so on. That is completely dependent on the data type. So we'll explore more on those grounds when we look at data types. For now, we'll just look at the segments and their field types. So when we talk about fields, so the sequence will represent what is which field that we are dealing with, and then you have length. Length represents the length of the characters or length of number of characters which can be allowed in that specific field. If you have a number, then that's the limitation. If you don't have a number, then there is no limitation on that specific field. For example, in MSH10 we have 199 characters, MSH2 has 5, MSH15 has 2 character limit. So you cannot go beyond these number of characters that you have. Next we have DT, which is data type. So you can see that there are many different kinds of data types. There are around 90 data types as part of version 2.8, which was released by HL7. We have so many data types. There is a lot of reason behind it. You might be thinking in programming language as well, we just have a handful of data types. For example, if you talk about JavaScript, we have just 7 or 8 of them. And if you talk about SQL, we just have 15 or 20 of them, something of that sort. But when we talk about HL7, we have 90 data types, and there is a reason behind it. So we'll talk about those reasons in the future data type sessions, as I said. But you'll be seeing various data types for each field. Don't worry about them right now. We'll be reviewing these examples later. Next, we have optionality. Optionality represents whether a certain field is required, optional. There are other terms as well, or other representations as well as part of this field. Let me just tell all of them to you. So we have R, which represent that particular field is required. We have optional, which represent that field is optional. So it is up to the user whether they want to communicate or transfer any information in that specific field. Then you have W, which represents withdrawn. So a certain field might be withdrawn as compared to the previous versions of HL7. Okay, and you'll be seeing C, which is conditionally required. So this represents that this field is conditionally required, maybe based on some other fields for some reason. So let's say, for example, uh, let's assume that there is a field where we have some sort of data, and there is another field which is holding some other information, but this information is dependent on the initial field that we are talking about. So both fields are dependent upon each other. Then at that point of time, you will see that certain field is conditionally required. Okay, and then you have uh, the last one, B. B is backward compatibility. So backward compatibility represents the backward compatible nature of the new version. So if a field is retained for backward compatibility, then you will see that representation here so that we be in sync with older versions. So these are the 5 representations that you'll be seeing in the optionality column. Next, you have repetitions. So this will represent whether a certain field is repetitive or not. It might be a scenario that a field will be can be repetitive. We'll be talking about repetitions more when we get to an example of that. Uh, so probably we will talk about it here when we talk about patient identifier list. So you will get an idea of what I'm talking about. So we'll explore more on that at that point. Then you have tables. So tables are of 2 types. Um, we'll we'll talk that with an example again, but these tables have some sort of data. So if there is some sort of information that has to be communicated in certain field, having a table, which means that we are pulling out the data from a table and sending that information in this specific field. So here we can see that we have 361, which means this field is associated with a table, and the information which we are going to transact in this field is going to be picked up from that specific table. So that's what this represents. We'll look at this with a better example. 3456 is not a very good example to understand that. We'll take a look at message 15 when we get there. Next, you have name, which is nothing but the field name. So that will represent the name of the field. So this document that you're seeing here is based on version 2.7, but my intention was not specifically to highlight on one specific version. The reason is that we are more or less focusing on version 2.x so that we can understand what are the important fields from a generic perspective, not specifically to one version. So which is why I have highlighted the fields here. The fields that you are seeing here are the fields which we need to be aware of as HL7 engineers. Um, it might take a little time to memorize. If you're working on it, it will be even more easier for you to just by heart them or keep them in mind. But as and when you practice more, you will get an understanding. The reason why I've highlighted this is these are, as I said, these are the most frequently talked about items or talked about fields when you're on calls, when you get into any implementation and so on. So if you know them, well and good. The ones that are not highlighted, we may not be using them in the real-time implementations. For example, if you look at MSH segment, this MSH segment that you see here, these are the fields. This is a test message of one of the live implementations that I am working on. So as you can see here, these are the only fields that we are using in that particular implementation. Most of the implementations will use only these things. Additionally, you might see a message 15 or 16 based on the acknowledgement type that they are expecting. So in this way, you might not be seeing all the fields to be used, which is why I've highlighted few of them, which you can have a view that we can learn from this. You can also go through this website called Candlesticks, which is a very good website. This website will give you a lot of information about various HL7 versions. It will also tell you what are the trigger events which are part of that version. If you want to go to specific trigger event, you can get there. And as you can see, as per HL7 standards, we have all of these segments. This is a standard profile. We call it as a standard profile as released by HL7. But in real time, we won't be seeing all of this. So this is as I said, this is an ADT-A04 message which actually I'm transacting in real-time implementation, or ADT-A28, which is a new patient registration, which may not have all the fields that we are seeing, all the segments that we are seeing here. Okay. So it will have segment information. You can break it down into segments, data types, tables are also present. So we'll be referring back to this site at times during the training. We'll see. Next we have next we'll talk about MSH segment today. So we will limit our session to MSH segment, and from tomorrow we'll explore more on other segments as well. So MSH1 is always field separator. So yesterday, when we were taking a look at an example of PID segment, I told you something that field number 1 is whatever is present within 2 different pipes, right? That is a rule. So whatever is present between 2 different pipes is one field, and we start counting the fields from this one. Field number 1, field number 2, this is field number 3, 4, 5, and so on. But there is one small exception only with respect to MSH segment. Okay, this is something that you need to keep in mind. When you look at a message segment, the pipe itself is called as field number 1 instead of whatever is held between 2 pipes. Okay, the pipe itself is called as field number 1. Okay, a small exception. Then you have MSH2, the control characters, and then from there on you have similar representation of whatever we have seen in PID. So only with MSH segment that is an exception, which is why we are seeing here that MSH1 is field separator. MSH2 is nothing but encoding characters or delimiters, whatever we have seen yesterday, the message syntax, the grammatical syntax of HL7. So these we see that we have characters here, the delimiting characters or encoding characters. Next, from 3 on, it's normal. You've count the field as whatever is present between 2 different pipes, field number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Okay, from there on, it is common. Then you have MSH 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's understand about 3, 4, 5, 6. So whenever we are dealing with any HL7 message, we know for sure that it is something where we are going to send a message from, and there will be a system which will be receiving the message. So there will always be a sender and there will always be a receiver. Sender is going to send a message in form of HL7, and receiver is going to receive it, and there will be obviously be acknowledgement sent back. We'll talk about acknowledgement in a while when we get to a message 15, 16 if time permits. But the sending system information should be communicated in a message, and the receiving system information should also be communicated in a message. As I said, a message acts as an index, giving you some sort of administrative information of who is sending the message, who is receiving the message, when did it get generated, what kind of message that we are dealing with. All of this information will be part of a message. So as you can see here, MSH 3, 4 represents sending application and sending facility. So which application is sending that HL7 message, and from which facility it is being generated. That information is communicated in MSH 3, 4. And you have MSH 5 and 6. We have receiving application and receiving facility. Which application is going to receive the message, which facility is going to receive the message will be represented here. And oftentimes in real-time implementations, you will see that sending facility and receiving facility will be used to go ahead and route the message accordingly when we have an interface with multiple destinations and so on. So we'll be talking about routing mechanism and all when we get to the integration engine part. When we talk about Mirth Connect, we'll talk about what is the router type of interface that we can create in Mirth Connect integration engine. So I'll take an example of MSH 4 or MSH 6 at that point of time, and I'll explain you what how these are used. And in MSH7, we have date and time of the message. So we can see that the date and time can be generated in MSH, whatever the message generation time is, we can use MSH7 as date and time of the message. Next, we have MSH9, which is message type. So I spoke to you about message type just now. So it will represent what kind of message that we are dealing with in MSH9. Then we have MSH10, which is message control ID. So what is message control ID? Each and every message that we are going to transact will have a unique number, right? So should have a unique number, not will have, it should have a unique number. And this unique number will help us to track down an HL7 message in an event of any HL7 not being, not reaching the destination, or message has reached the destination, but for some reason it did not get processed or something. So usually when we are implementing an interface or developing an interface during the testing process, we use this MSH10 to communicate with each other. The engineer on the other side or the engineer on this side would specifically use message control ID to say that this is a message that I'm talking about. And why do we use MSH10? Why can't we use patient name or patient ID? So that is something important that we need to understand. Being HL7 engineers, you will have access to patient data. As per HIPAA compliance or HIPAA rules, you are not supposed to communicate patient data in an insecure email. So when you are talking, when you won't be always on calls during the process of testing, right? So when we are testing an interface, we might have to tell the destination person or the person who is receiving the HL7 message, we might have to tell them that I'm talking about this specific message, but how can I point it to a specific message? Using a message 10, I'll say that this is the message control ID message that I am pointing towards to, and this message has so and so issue, or this message I'm communicating so and so information in message which has message control ID of so and so. And as I said, as per HIPAA rules, you're not supposed to go ahead and use patient ID, patient name, or anything using which you can track down a patient. Any patient information cannot be used cannot be sent or transacted in an email. You can do that. There is a clause. If you're sending out a secure email, which is encrypted email, then you can go ahead and transact patient information in the email. So just keep that in mind. If you're new to HL7, patient data is always considered very, very serious. So you should be very careful while communicating patient data through an email. Next, we'll talk about MSH11, which is processing ID. So this will represent whether a patient's, whether the HL7 message that we are dealing with is a test or a development or a production message. So this is a test message that I'm dealing with. So in MSH11, you can see that we have T. So the other two terms or other two letters that we transact here is D and P. So what is the use of this? In real-time implementations, the receiving system will definitely take a look at processing ID, and it will reject the message accordingly. If it is a T or a D, it will reject the message. P represents production, so it will only process the production messages. It won't process the test or development messages. Next, you have a message 12, which will indicate version ID. So that will represent what kind of HL7 version that we are dealing with. So here I am generating HL7 version 2.5. So that version information is communicated in MSH 12. MSH 15 and 16. So MSH 15 and 16 represent what kind of acknowledgement that we are dealing with. So what is an acknowledgement? First of all, we need to understand that. Whenever we send out an HL7 message, the destination system would receive the HL7 message. What is the confirmation for the sending system that the message has been delivered successfully to the destination and it made it through the systems of destination, right? There should be some sort of communication, or there should be some sort of confirmation for the sending system to know that yes, the message got delivered. For example, if you go to any store, you pay the bill and you get the counterfoil or the receipt. So that receipt holds as a proof stating that you have paid the bill, right? Similarly, when an HL7 message is delivered, there will be some sort of, there should be some sort of communication back from the destination system telling the source system that yes, you have sent out the message and I have received it. So that type of message is called as an acknowledgement message. The destination system will acknowledge back to the source system with the help of another acknowledgement message, acknowledgement related HL7 message stating that I have received your message. So we have two fields to represent an acknowledgement. We have a message 15, we have a message 16. A message 15 represents accept acknowledgement. A message 16 represents application level acknowledgement. 16 is called as the original mode of acknowledgement, and a message 15 is called as enhanced mode of acknowledgement. So we will understand more about this when we get to understand the MSA segment and acknowledgement message type. So we'll talk more about enhanced mode and original mode more at that point of time. But for now, just remember that message 15 and 16 will tell the destination system what kind of acknowledgement the source system is expecting. Okay, so looking at message 15 and 16, the receiving system will understand, oh yes, the source system is expecting this kind of acknowledgement, so I have to send back whatever they are expecting. Okay, so destination system will determine that and they will go ahead and send out that acknowledgement type back to the source system. Okay, now if you look at the table, we have table 155 here. So when you click on that, it will take you to the Candlesticks website, and here we can see that table number 155, and this is an HL7 standard table, right? So there are two types of tables when we are dealing with any table definition. So right now for this field, you have MSH 15 and 16 have table number 155 and 155. Both of them have same table. Here you are seeing that we have various values that we'll be sending over in MSH 15 and 16, and it represents an HL7 standard table. Whenever we are talking about tables, we have two types of tables. One is HL7 standard table, another one is HL7 user defined table. Sorry, another one is user defined table. If an HL7 defines a table, it will also provide the values that have to be used in that specific field. Okay, and you are compelled to go ahead and use that specific values from the HL7 tables only. You cannot go ahead and use the values as per your will and wish. If it is a user defined table, then it is up to you. Whatever values you want to use, you can go ahead and use it. For example, let's go ahead and look at marital status. Let me pull that out. Yeah, if you look at marital status, this is a user defined table, and here HL7 has recommended few values, but you are not compelled to go ahead and use this. It is up to you what you want to use. Obviously we'll have these values for any marital relationship, but whatever value you want to represent, you can go ahead and give it as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. You are not compelled to go ahead and use whatever is defined by HL7. User defined tables might have some values which are suggested values by HL7 organization, but it is not a compulsion. And you will see that at times few tables are completely blank, which means those are user defined tables and user can fill them up. So to summarize, there are two types of tables. One is HL7 standard table, another one is user defined table. In HL7 standard table, you have to use the values that are provided by HL7 only, and in a user defined table, user can use whatever data they want to go ahead and use, whatever values they want to go ahead and use. HL7 also suggests few values as from their perspective. If you want to use them, you can use. It is up to you. So that is all about MSS segment for today. So tomorrow we will go ahead and look at other segments, and we will continue with our exploration of various events and various field types. We'll be looking at event type, we'll be looking at PID segment and so on. So we'll continue taking a look at that. So I'll open up for questions. Do you guys have any questions with respect to whatever we have seen today or yesterday?
Yeah, Dixon,
Yeah,
regarding
Chandrakant.
can you scroll down
Yeah.
a little bit? 199 character, the message control ID. Does it start from 1 or we can define from what number it is like?
No, this is going to just tell you the number of characters allowed in this field. That is all.
But when we start communicating, the message
Mhm.
control ID starts from one number, 001, or what number it starts?
It starts from, yeah, number one. It counts from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is MSH segment, right? So in MSH 10 we have numbers. So it will count from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So you cannot go ahead and send more than 199 characters in this field.
Okay.
So any other questions from anyone?
Can you explain MSH11 again with the processing ID, with the T and then I think you said D?
Right. We have 3 terms or 3 letters that can be transacted. So T is for testing, D is for development, and P is for production. So when you start any implementation, you will start in this process, right? Whenever you start working on any interface, first you develop the interface. Then during the process of development, you might have to communicate the message to the destination system. So how would the destination system understand that it is an original message or a test message or a production message? So using the term or using the letter that is present in message 11, destination system would understand that this is a testing message or a development message or a production. This will also help us to go ahead and avoid test messages or development messages being processed in production. So production will be strictly telling the system that please process only the HL7 messages which have the value of P, so that in case if it receives accidentally, if someone is sending D or T related message, the production systems will reject them, stating that this is not an actual production message. So that is how message 11 is used.
Thank you.
You're
MSH
welcome.
11 is only one character, or what is the length of that character? Can you go back to the screen, please?
This one, message 11?
Yeah, MSH 11.
Yeah. They
Zero
did not
character.
represent a character limit, but
The
usually it is
length
just
is
1 characters. Yeah.
one character. Okay.
Yeah.
So can we put it like instead of D, T, P, can we put like as PT or TP also?
No, you cannot. You cannot. I haven't
So
seen someone putting that. We just use D, T, and P values in there.
no, the question why I'm asking is that, for example, if someone want to do the testing in production, right?
No, they
So
are not supposed to use it.
I mean, before go live, sometimes it is possible for suppose the vendor does not have, or they don't have the test environment. Sometimes we had to do the testing before go live. We had to testing in the production environment, right? So
Right.
in that case, can I mention like this is testing in production, like a TP?
Yeah,
Can
in
you
that scenario, you can send a test message with a value of P in MSH 11.
right? But so that means only length is only one character, not more than one. Okay, that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand.
Right.
Thank you.
Dixon, this is Manish. Quick question. So I work
Hey,
more
man.
on the fires. I work more on the fire side. So to write a fire API, having a knowledge of this is very important, right? The messaging structure and how HL7 messaging works, right? To transform HL7 message to a fire compatible, correct?
Resource. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're planning for a mapping between V2 and fire, then yes, you need to have a knowledge about it.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
But if you're implementing new fire implementation altogether, then it is not much needed. I would say. I mean, I wouldn't say not much needed, but if you know, fire will be very easy. But if you don't know, then understanding the functional aspects of fire resources becomes little complicated.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, because we use the clients, we use the services for the fire services, which is already there, APIs. So we just use their APIs to get the EHR, EMR data. So that's what we do. So, but it's good to have this knowledge to know how it works at the HL7 site.
Right. For mapping, definitely needed. For getting the data from fire resource, that is also easy. But when you post a bundle or when you're posting data, then that is where your functional complication comes into play. So for that, you will need to have good functional knowledge.
So this course is only HL7, right? You will not be covering fire that much, correct?
Yes, this is all about V2.
Okay.
So we are planning for a separate course on fire in future.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So any other questions from anyone else? So if you guys do not have any questions, then I think we can drop. Yeah.
I'm Dr. Bhaskar. I'm working as a medical researcher in one of reputed company. My question is, our company is working on workflow related to medical terminology. So, can I take advantage if I learn this HL7 course?
So you're saying medical terminology in the sense usage of ICD, SNOMED, and CPT codes, or
Yes.
sorry, I did not get clear understanding of that.
See, my company is like working for insurance company. So there is workflow system. So they used to map all the terminology, ICD code coding, and all the cancer related data. So yeah, maybe some of developer are working on workflow system. So currently I used to collect all the data for the mapping.
Okay, got it.
Yes,
So that is
as a
something
medical
totally.
researcher, as a medical researcher, I used to collect all the informations for the workflow system. So is there any relevancy or is there any connection between HL7 and medical researcher?
So partly, little bit there is a connection, because when we talk about financial segments, we'll be talking about ICD codes, we will be talking about CPT codes and all. And when we get to order messages and all, we'll be talking more about CPT, SNOMED codes and so on. But the thing is, what you are doing is completely different from what HL7 is intended for. HL7 is intended to represent a transaction that is happening so that information can be communicated from one system to another. What you are doing is something laying the base for your hospital or your clinic, whatever you are dealing with. You're laying down the base grounds of usage of terminology and how we can use it in order to communicate with the insurance company in the future, so that you can complete your billing using those terminology grounds. So, but HL7 is used for transacting messages between different systems, which is different again from what you're doing.
Okay. So is there any, if we talk about growth point of view, is there any growth if we opt this course?
Absolutely. So what happens, I'll tell you. Once you lay down your coding systems, terminology systems and all, eventually there should be communication between the internal systems that you have, whether it is PM, EHR, or even if it is HIS. You have to communicate back the charge related information using HL7 only. So whatever internal or the lab related communications will happen through HL7, and these will generate a charge which will have the codes that you're talking about, and these codes will be used in order to generate the claims with your insurance company. So once you are good with terminology, next thing that you will be doing is communication will be happening in the form of HL7 only within your systems.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so just small information. So first two sessions are free, as I said before. So from tomorrow, if you would like to continue, you can enroll for our program. So I hope I communicated the entire curriculum yesterday. So you can reach out to Srinivas. Srinivas has already pasted his information in the chat. You can go ahead and reach out to him. And you guys can go ahead and provide your email address and phone number in the chat if you're planning to continue. And someone else asked, all right, yeah, we'll talk more about, so no questions in the chat. All right, that's fine. Someone asked, okay, hold on. Mohammed Mohsin asked, while you were explaining about a message you have said about the batch file, can you explain that? Okay. So batch files are nothing but one or more HL7 messages being transacted in one single file. So let's say you have 100 files, 100 MSH message, 100 HL7 messages combined in one single file and being transacted as a batch. So this happens at times when the destination system wants to receive the entire batch of HL7 message that happened for that day at some time during the night. So at that point of time, the batch files might have the segments called BHS, FHS, which are batch header segment, file header segment, and all. So those are additional header related segments that we'll be seeing in the in batch related implementations. Does that clear your question, Mohsin? Okay, it answers my question. All right, guys. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.